Welcome to the Church Universal series, where we seek to tell the often untold story of the many groups, outreaches, and apostolates in the Catholic Church, which are making a positive difference in the world through their charitable works and prayerful lives. Hello, I'm Father Joseph Mary, and today I'm speaking with members of a group numbering 2.5 million members in 182 nations. My guests today are John Mundell, Elizabeth Garlow, and John Gallagher, who are members of the Focolare movement, who will be talking today about a different way to run a business with a mindset of helping others, with an outlook of communion with others. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Elizabeth, where did this idea come from to run a business differently with this idea of communion with others?
Well, the Economy of Communion project was actually born out of the Focolare movement, which is an ecclesial movement in the Catholic Church. It started in 1943 in Trent, Italy, by a young woman by the name of Chiara Lubick. She was 23 years old,
Wow.
and together with several other young women, they began to, in the midst of a heavily bombarded Trent, Italy during World War II, they began to try and bring the gospel to life by sharing what they had with those who were in need. Literally going door to door and understanding who might need food, clothing, shelter, maybe some consolation. And in the midst of doing that, they started to generate this communion of goods among them. And it actually, the more they shared, the more they received. They generated this so-called superabundance, and as we know through the gospel, they saw the hundredfold come back to them time and time again. And so it was this practice of a communion of material and spiritual goods that really gave life to a practice that we see really throughout the Focolare movement all over the world. So fast forward to 1991, and Chiara Lubick is traveling to Sao Paulo, Brazil, to visit the Focolare community there. She had just read and was reflecting on Centesimus Annus, the Church's encyclical, and its emphasis on economic and social justice. So she had that in her heart and mind, and she met the Focolare communities there who were trying to practice an economy of communion amongst themselves, but really still encountered great need because of this stark contrast between the wealthy and the poor. So she thought there has to be a really innovative new way that we can try to grow this communion of goods among us. So she proposed launching this Economy of Communion project. And the idea was for members of the Focolare movement and beyond to launch businesses that could do a number of things. They could put their financial resources, their profits into common for the greater good, for the common good. They could create jobs to help break the cycle of poverty for individuals, all in the community and around the world. And they could put this spirituality of communion into practice within the business on a day-to-day basis. So today, almost 25 years later, there are 850 businesses that participate in the Economy of Communion all around the world. And about up to 12,000 people are assisted each year financially through the profits of these businesses. 8,000 people are employed within these businesses, and those 8,000 people in turn support upwards of 25,000 family members. So we have a big Economy of Communion family.
Now, what would motivate them to become part of this? Why would 850 plus businesses want to be a part of the Economy of Communion?
So a lot of business entrepreneurs today, I think, are thirsty to live their vocation. They're thirsty to live their faith within the workplace as business leaders. And so the Economy of Communion really offers an extraordinary invitation for people to do that in a way that is an expression of the whole human self.
So it's not just kind of a bottom line, maximize your profits, forget about people. It's a whole different way to run a business. It's not the Shark Tank mentality, if you will.
It's a new kind of Shark Tank, right?
Yes.
The Shark Tank for social good.
Right.
And so in essence, you're right. It's the bottom line is it's important because we want these businesses to be able to sustain themselves and to grow and to help more people. But it's not profit-centered in the same way you might find in sort of a traditional business proposal. We're really trying to put the human person at the center of every transaction, every action of the business. So it's really trying to put a person-centered approach.
Consideration for the other person. And also the community outside, too, that you want to bring some benefit to those that are in need.
That's right.
That's one of the reasons my wife and I considered joining 20-some years ago as well, because of this ability to live our faith within the context of business, as well as participate in the mission of this economy of communion, where really the objective is that all may be one and that no one will be in need. Mm-hmm. And to be able to participate that as a business owner is an incredible thing. You feel like you're part of something much bigger than yourself.
Something bigger than yourself, and that you have God's blessing. I would think you experience God's blessing on your business even more so.
I think it's a daily experience. You know, the girls in Trent, Italy, on a daily basis felt this providence from God coming down. Someone needed an apple, and they were given an apple and gave it away. Then they received a basket full of apples, then a bushel full of apples. The girls asked for a large-sized shoe for a person in church one day, and they came out of the church, and someone gave them that shoe. So this experience of providence back then is experienced in our businesses on a daily basis. You know, unexpected good news from a client for a new contract, or a new employee, or even someone unexpectedly helping you on a project. All of those little signs of providence we feel like are just part and parcel of participating in the economy.
And you mentioned last night about the Trinitarian life is self-giving and receiving love. And you talked about the superabundance, that's really what you experience when you have this concern for others, this communion with others.
It really is. This idea of the business becomes a real family, you know, where you develop relationships, and you really try to love the others in the business and outside the business. And this experience we have of the supernatural, or the presence of God that occurs while you're doing that.
Now, John, you are a professor of business management, and you've written a book about the economy of communion practices in North America. What's your whole take on this? What were you motivated to write a book about this? Why were you?
Well, I think the economy of communion is just a very powerful idea, and powerful enough to challenge a lot of our dominant theories and ideas about business and what constitutes good business and good management in particular. And so I was just immediately personally captivated, and but I really also felt called to help tell the story of this movement and this project, and so that others could.
So you saw it as something very positive, a positive input to the whole business mentality and business establishment.
Yeah, there's a considerable amount of discussion in the field about the purpose of business these days, and tremendous emphasis on sustainability, and but the economy of communion goes a step further, I think, and really by placing the person at the center of everything that happens, everything that goes on in the business. It's a pretty radical idea, and it demands some radical things of business owners and entrepreneurs.
We're going to talk about that in the second part of this show. Let's take a look now at the video that you put together, which kind of encapsulates this economy of communion so that we can learn it better.
With more than 2.5 billion people across the planet in need of better living conditions and health care, is there hope for ever improving this situation? In 1991, Kiar Lubeck, founder of the worldwide Focolare movement, visits her community in Brazil and witnesses the extreme inequality so apparent in the city of Sao Paulo. The movement, with its own communion of goods practiced for decades, can no longer meet the basic needs expressed by some of its poorest members. Kiar, together with those gathered with her, arrive at a novel idea: to start for-profit businesses that could generate additional jobs and freely allot profits in 3 parts: for direct aid for people in need, for educational projects to help foster a culture of giving, and for the continued growth and development of the business. A worldwide network of over 750 small to medium-sized businesses, the Economy of Communion Project is a new global reality. Businesses working together across borders to accomplish one thing: no one in need. Share the vision. Share the dream.
The mission of the EOC is really summed up in that line of the gospel that describes the early Christians in the Acts of the Apostles, where it says, they were of one heart and of one mind, and there was no one in need among them. That simple phrase, no one in need among them, sums up this idea of an economy where resources are shared and distributed with those in need, so that everyone that comes in contact with a group of businesses really becomes part of a family where sharing, receiving, giving all happen dynamically.
Before, my house only had one bedroom, a bathroom and a kitchenette. Now, with the help we've received, we've been able to extend the house. We've got 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a bathroom, a front porch and a kitchen. Before, there was no room to sit down with the children and nowhere for them to do their homework. Everywhere was a mess. Now, everything is so much better.
There are 30 businesses throughout Croatia and its bordering countries which are linked to the little town of Faro.
One of the best things I like about this idea, economy of communion, is that after developing the business and giving what is due to employees, we are able to give a part of the profits to people in need. We are trying to make business life more human, something more than just making money. We try to take all these factors into consideration.
The importance of the economy of communion is its universality. All the economic models known up to now are historically limited. They come either from ideas of individualism or from ideas of collectivism. The economy of communion is a return to human values, to the idea of work as an ennobling activity and the economy as a means, not the goal.
We would have stayed, nice and happy with a one-unit bank. And then Chiara came and challenged us to do more. And Chiara said, do it for the poor. And he said, that's a lot of people. And we can't stay just one unit. And so we began that program, that different kind of microcredit, which is unsecured. And today we have about 8,000 clients and growing. So in essence, what we're saying is we can see ourselves slowly developing from being mere dispensers of credit into enterprise development enablers. It's given us a greater awareness of what the poor or what small or low-income groups are actually capable of.
So we just saw this one business that we closed with, that has prospered now. Mm-hmm. Talk about, John, how this is really a way to meet the poverty of the world, to be a model for meeting those in poverty today.
Sure. Well, first, our modern definition of poverty is really quite impoverished itself because we define poverty in strictly economic terms, material terms. In fact, we define poverty as living below a certain specified daily dollar amount. Mm. And when we do that, we actually then create a category of people that we call the poor. And in some ways, that's an artificial distinction, and it breeds separation and erects barriers between those on either side of that artificial economic divide. But a spirituality of communion, a spirituality of unity, the Focolare spirituality that animates the economy of communion, views poverty as unmet needs. And viewed that way, it includes all of us, because we are all, in that sense, the poor. We all have unmet needs. But we know this and understand this only when we're in relationship with each other. And it's in that relationship that we not only understand our needs, but we understand our resources that we have, either individually or in common, that can be used to meet those needs. So the economy of communion is really about meeting needs, and viewed another way is really about counteracting exclusion. Exclusion in any regard, exclusion from dignified work, exclusion from material wages, exclusion from friendship, from relationships, from love, from justice, from mercy. And so the economy of communion businesses act on that understanding of poverty as unmet needs, as counteracting exclusion. And therefore, profits from the economy of communion are essentially invested in inclusion, which explains a lot of the motivation behind many of the development projects that the EOC is involved in.
So Elizabeth, talk about some of those development projects.
So as John was mentioning, they're all sort of the foundation of all the development projects that the economy of communion seeks to advance is that experience of communion. So the Focolare movement in and of itself, as you mentioned, which numbers about 2.5 million people around the world, is really seeking to build communion wherever we are. And so in that experience, we come to understand the needs of one another. And so economy of communion profits rely and work closely with the structure, the infrastructure of the Focolare movement, which is able to identify needs in local communities if a family is in need of school supplies, or if there are medical expenses that have come forth that need to be met through financial assistance. So we work closely through a non-governmental organization set up by the Focolare movement called Action for a United World to identify and meet those needs. But another really exciting and important development for us actually has been investing in educational institutes and experiences to help promote this new style of business and economic thinking. And so we actually have been investing in everything from elementary schools in Latin America that are making the economy of communion principles a core aspect of the school's curriculum. And we're also working closely with Catholic universities in East Africa and the Cameroon that have adopted the economy of communion as a core element of their business curriculum. So we believe that in order to sort of enact this culture change, which is really what this is, we need to also be thinking about the ways that we're partnering with and advancing different educational institutions.
It's really a Catholic way to look at it, isn't it? And the rooted in the Trinity, which is a communion of persons, we are invited into that communion and to the communion of the saints, that we're all called to be united together. Now, John, you talked about a crucible in the business practices, spiritual crucible. I'm not sure, what was that term again that you used?
The term I use is crucible of formation.
Formation,
and it really applies to, it's really a way to try to describe the life of an EOC business owner, because this emphasis on inclusion has implications for every transaction and every interaction that takes place related to the business, whether that's with customers or employees or suppliers. And so the business owner is faced with not only responding to the normal challenges and risks and frustrations of business, but also with learning to see in every moment what God is calling them to do in with respect to the relationships that they're part of. So it really is, as John Paul talks about the subjective dimension of work, it really forms and shapes the entrepreneur in very spiritual ways. It's a form of spiritual development, I think.
Our other John here, you are one of those business owners. Tell us about that experience. What are the challenges of living this out as an entrepreneur, as starting your own business?
Well, you know, as you know, business can be a very messy thing. You know? I mean, within the day-to-day hustle and bustle of business, unexpected events can happen, challenges, employees not getting along with each other. There are a lot of practical things that you're challenged with as a business owner. And so living this lifestyle of communion is the first choice the business owner has to make. How do I in each moment, every day, with whoever God puts next to me, how am I to treat this person? And most often it is with a loving attitude, right, with being able to see, for example, if I'm Catholic, Jesus in the other person. And so that's the challenge. And the spirituality of unity really calls us to try to live each moment, whether we're trying to help an employee who's late on an assignment or if the copier is stuck. Yeah. These are very concrete things. We can't just think about doing this. We have to actually, you know, do something specific that helps the situation of the company. So there are these opportunities within the company to build community, to build family relations, and also to help the employees themselves build these relationships with each other. And then outside the company is even another reach that we go, and that is, how do we live this style as a business in a local community with the relationships we have with our clients, but also with other businesses. And then also with the global community, how do we share our profits with those in need, and with communicating with other businesses that are part of this network. So it's a challenge, it's messy, but even in the messiness and the kind of sufferings that are typical of business, right, this kind of lifestyle helps us find meaning. It connects us to this ultimate goal that Jesus had, may they all be one.
I thought it was an important point you made last night about the element of suffering, you know, in our life. And in doing something challenging like this, it's going to not only just benefit the business owner himself, but he has an idea for his employees, those outside of the business. It's challenging, there is a suffering involved, and yet there's a growth that comes through that. Talk about that.
Well, I am not the same person I was 20 years ago when we started the company, and it's because of the challenges that I've had to overcome, and that this kind of lifestyle of communion helps us with. You know, the business of running a business can be very lonely, and as John talked about, very isolating. And so if you're left to your own devices, you can really feel yourself getting down from all the kind of challenges. You can also even become down even when you're successful. Even when you have profits, they can become meaningless and empty because they're not based on something that is good. And so the economy of communion helps us see all of those sufferings in businesses in a new light, that gives us the motivation to realize we're part of something bigger. We're part of building this new heavens and new earth. And that in the process of doing that, we fulfill ourselves as people and as business owners. So it's been one of the most significant things in my life, certainly, that has helped me grow in my faith as a Catholic, and also my perspective of seeing the world as also part of what I'm about.
Now, Elizabeth, you're the director of the Economy of Communion Commission in North America. How are you helping to build connections between these businesses? I think you said there's like 40 businesses in the United States.
That's right. We have about 40 businesses, and hopefully counting. So we have a community of business entrepreneurs here in the United States and also in Canada. We also have students, academics, employees, individuals that are interested in these in bringing these principles into their business and workplace environments who join our North American Economy of Communion Association. We gather on an annual basis, typically in July or August, for a 2.5-day meeting that is half educational institute, half retreat. So we seek to grow our understanding of the Economy of Communion's proposal while also nourishing our own ability to bring that to the world. And so we have a community of businesses, as John was just mentioning, business can be quite a lonely endeavor. And one of our hopes is that we can foster a community among the business entrepreneurs themselves so that they can be strengthened by the experience of one another. And in that mission of bringing heaven to earth through their business lives, they can grow and be fortified through that experience. So we not only do we meet on an annual basis, but we seek to share experiences with one another through our online communications tools. We actually have a global website. It's called our B2B website, our business-to-business website, where business entrepreneurs can both share their experiences of their daily lives as well as post opportunities to either host a student, an intern that they might want to encourage and form in EOC principles.
Now we're coming to the end of our program, unfortunately, but how would they get in contact? Can you give them like the website, and why would some business owner want to join this group?
So we would invite any interested business owner or individual to get in touch with us if you're looking for a community of people who want to bring faith and work together in a seamless way as part of a community of individuals. You can get in touch with us on our website, which is edc-online.org. If you search Economy of Communion in North America, you'll find our North American blog where we're always posting experiences. You can also find us on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com and search Economy of Communion in North America. And we just recently released a book that is a description of all the Economy of Communion businesses in North America. So this is kind of a nice introduction to those day-to-day business practices that you can find. It's Structures of Grace.
Structures of Grace. Thank you all very much for being part of the program today and to tell us about the Economy of Communion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
St. Paul writes that God gives a variety of gifts and inspires a variety of services for the common good. What gifts has He given to you? What service has He inspired in you? Perhaps the Lord is calling you to make your workplace a place to grow in holiness and an instrument of helping the poor by being part of the Economy of Communion. May God bless and guide you. See you again this time next week for another episode of the Church Universal.